Clostridium organisms are by and large very deadly and poisonous organisms. And there was a medical news that identified an organism by the name of Clostridium perfringens as possibly being responsible for dissolving the myelin sheathing and causing multiple sclerosis. I firmly have said and believe what's been said for 2,000 years, that every disease has its origin in the gut. And what modern pharma has not addressed, looking for the cause of things instead of treating symptoms.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trenev, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm Jen Trenev, your host and health coach, here with you every week. And I'll preface this one by saying, I know we've done many an episode about gut health, and yet today's conversation will still be potentially new information for you. So I wanted to talk about the connection between addiction and the gut. And especially this time of year, it felt really fitting. I know the holidays can be filled with lots of emotions and lots of situations that are often focused on addictive substances, right? Whether it's sugar or the alcohol. So I can't wait to get into it. Let me introduce you to our esteemed guest. She is the mother of probiotics. Her extensive experience and knowledge of the industry began with her family's 750-year history of producing the most beneficial yogurt prized by the royal family of Yugoslavia. She's the founder and president of Natron Inc. Natron's probiotic products come with 40 years of focused, rigorous scientific research and technology from leading scientists and researchers in the field of probiotics. For 40 years, she has stated the proper precision probiotic selected beneficial bacteria supplementation will have profound effects on every aspect of human health. This includes physical, mental, emotional, skin, and organ health. It will be regarded as the foundation of health. Now she's joining us on Salad with a Side of Fries to share her knowledge. So without further ado, I give you Natasha Trenev.
Thank you. That was a very nice and welcome introduction. And I'm so happy to be able to impart some of my knowledge to your listeners.
I know. I'm excited to have you here, and your family's history and your story is incredible. So we'll start there and then keep the conversation going. But so I don't have to interrupt you too many times, let's tell our members what they're getting, and then we'll start with your story, okay?
Okay.
Okay, awesome. So members, I am sending you 3 recipes this week, and they are all recipes for better for you beverages. Okay, one is for winter sangria that's made with ultimate aloe and maximum orac, so lots of antioxidants in there. The next one is for spicy hot chocolate made with functional mushrooms and some herbal caffeine and energy for mental focus. And then finally, in case those 2 aren't enough for you, or maybe you're in a warmer climate for the holidays, the last recipe is for sex on a beach. This one has vitamin D, bromelain plus, and a sexual health formula. So lots of botanicals in there for your wellness and some fun cocktails. You could certainly add some adult libations into that. But honestly, they are delicious just as is. So I'll also give you links for all of those ingredients as well. And since it's officially December, the last month of the quarter, it's time for your quarterly live Q&A. So it is, again, a one-on-one, because I know schedules can be hectic this time of year. So you'll find that info in your email on Friday. You can pick a time that's convenient for you. So if you want these recipes or your quarterly live one-on-one, make sure you're a member. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions. It's a total deal, really a steal, because when you take advantage of the full offerings, you're going to save far more than that $10 cost. In December alone, you'll make back the cost of the entire year. So it's seriously a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, being a member supports this podcast and this community so that we can continue to bring you new episodes and experts every week. So remember, all you have to do is head over to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link in the show notes because frankly, that's easier. Once you're there, you're going to click support now, enter your email and payment info, click subscribe, and you're all set. You'll get the recipes for the 3 better for you adult bevies, the winter sangria, the spicy hot cocoa, and sex on a beach, and your quarterly live Q&A, which will be just you and me for 30 minutes. Okay, Natasha, spotlight on you. Tell us your story. How did you become the mother of probiotics?
Well, it started with being inducted into my family business when I finished UCLA because my parents didn't have a grasp of English the way they should to run a business. So then I had to learn firsthand what made up yogurt. And in order to learn that, I started looking at technical research data. And I was the first one to set a liquid yogurt standard with the state of California in 1969. And then we were the first ones to introduce kefir through Altadena Dairy, set up standards for that. And believe it or not, fermented foods have a very strict standard, and people throw out names without knowing exactly what they're talking about. And it's a mishmash of products out there that need straightening out. And later on, the state of New York invited me to come and comment and give testimony for them to set the first real kefir standard in the state of New York, which was then borrowed by other states such as Illinois and some of the other states across the country. Unfortunately, nobody's really regulating what organisms they have in their product. They're just calling anything they want kefir or anything they want yogurt, which is wrong. And it's the quality of the microbes used in the starter culture and the quality of the milk that makes the yogurt superior. Those two things are very vital to get a superior product. Fast forward, I started doing research and I was given an exclusive agreement with the University of Nebraska to represent their findings about a super strain of Lactobacillus acidophilus. And that led me to start the whole probiotic industry because I believed that there was cultural and integral changes happening with people's GI issues, and that we needed a freeze-dried concentrate of a beneficial bacteria that actually evolved with Homo sapiens. And I was very cognizant of what were the safe bacteria, how they needed to be handled, how we need to meet their criteria for survival, because bacteria are a lot smarter than we are.
Yep.
They don't perform because we have a marketing plan. They perform because you entice them to perform and give them the tools for them to be healthy in order to serve your body. And so in 1982, I launched the first probiotic product by the name of Superdophilus through a system of distribution into the natural practitioner market. And then that same product was sold in the health food store as Megadophilus. And then all of my techniques are still revolutionary. Nobody's actually doing anything like we do because virtually every other probiotic sold in the market is made by someone else with some idea of what needs to be done. But it's basically same formulation with a different mix of bacteria that may or may not survive stomach acid and a really very spotty results because nobody really knows this vertically unless you spend a lifetime studying the organisms, studying the fermentation process, learning how to stabilize them. And why is this so necessary today? And there's one reason. $4.3 trillion are spent in the United States for healthcare. 80% of that is on chronic disease. We are seeing young people with colon cancer that we haven't seen before. We are seeing young people with so many chronic illnesses, autoimmune included, we've never seen before. People can't digest. They can't turn their food into energy. There's multiple addictions. And basically, we have a mess. And we need to start seriously thinking about how we're going to turn this around. Otherwise, by the year 2030, the cases of autism will be 1 in 2 children. And that's going to destroy our social structure, our economy, everything else. So it's a pretty serious problem. And it's being swept under the rug because people really don't want to deal with it. They're not taught to deal with complex issues and think comprehensively. They're like cute, simple ideas that, rhyme with whatever is the popular saying of the month. And that's no longer going to solve the problems.
Right. Well, I would venture to say, and you'd probably agree that, it never really solved the problem. It put a Band-Aid on it.
That is correct. Because another statistic that should make your listeners aware that only 7% of mothers in North America, when they give vaginal birth and breastfeed their child, is able to give the right microorganism to that child to establish a healthy relationship between the immune cells and the body so that there is a level of tolerance so that the child is not exposed to allergies, to all kinds of problems because the immune system and the microbes didn't establish a correct relationship at the time of birth. And this is another troubling statistic, which nobody talks about. And most people don't even know what you're talking about it when you talk about it. But there is an underlying cultural shift that's not being addressed. And there's not enough doctors left to handle the symptoms for the amount of problems that everybody has.
That, in your opinion and in your research and observation, tend to all lead back to the gut.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We are actually a hybrid of microbes and human cells. We've got about 50 trillion cells and about 100 trillion microbes that line the 27 feet of our GI tract. We have a microbiome on our face. We have a microbiome in our organs. We even have microbes in our neurons, in our brain cells. They're everywhere. We are literally communicating with each other, and we have to create that optimal unity that was there before when we enjoyed optimal health. And getting, quick results or somebody shaking their fanny and saying, oh, you got to do this is not going to exactly get you what you need. I'm sorry, I'm sort of being glib here, but it's a very serious problem and people need to address it seriously because there's so much information being thrown out there and none of it is working because we're not getting better, we're getting worse. And so just know this, that your body replaces itself every year. Every 365 days, those 50 trillion cells are replaced. About 10 million of those cells we lose every minute. So if your body is not capable of producing good proteins, but cheap proteins, it leads to disease. That's the bottom line. If we understand that, then we understand that we are rebuilding ourselves and we better pay attention and get, information that will help us return the country to a basic health pattern that we need to do desperately.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk more about some of that. But our focus today, too, is about the connection between addiction and the gut. So walk us through that. I think, there are many kinds of addiction and I think there's a lot of maybe philosophies about the cause of addictive behavior, addictive actions. But how do you see it from your perspective and what's that connection?
Yeah, well, there is something called the gut-brain axis.
Yep.
It's a dual information feeding channel and sharing. And I'll give you a simplistic answer first, and then I'll get to the more complicated answer. People develop sugar addictions not only because of themselves, but because yeast and other microbes in your gut will deprive you of the feel-good chemicals that you want if you don't give them what they want. So if you've ever been a female and had that urge for sugar, like you're willing to kill for anything sweet, you know what I'm talking about. And it's not just hormonal, because the hormones are affected by the chemicals these microbes produce, whether good or bad for our health. And that's why addictions become so difficult to shake, because not only does your cellular structure become addicted, you become addicted psychologically, and the microbes in your gut become addicted as well. So you have to handle an addiction on multi-levels if you're really serious of getting rid of that addiction, whatever it may be.
So you mentioned sugar already. Let's start with sugar. Talk to us about understanding how that happens.
Well, when we talk about diet and health, this is the simple explanation that when you eat certain foods, it segregates for certain development of bacteria or yeast in your gut. Now, when yeast is kept at about 10% of that 100 trillion microbes, it's under control. It doesn't allow the yeast to shift in shapes. When the yeast is allowed to overgrow because of consumption of alcohol, antibiotics, stress, that reduces the production of certain beneficial byproducts in our gut, when the yeast is allowed to overgrow, it actually shifts into a mold. When it shifts into a mold, it actually has projectiles that hang themselves on your intestinal wall, for lack of a better word. And then they will start pumping chemicals into your body to either reward or punish you if it doesn't get what it wants. And this is not science fiction, guys. This is the truth. So that's why, those very important chemicals like serotonin and dopamine are produced in our gut and transported to our brain via the vagus nerve, which is connected to our brain and to our stomach. So yes, there is a lot to that says that, what you eat, you will grow or stimulate the right types of bacteria. You will keep the yeast under control, or you will encourage the yeast to grow and change shape and become a big problem, because once the yeast changes shapes and turns into a mold, it is extremely difficult to get rid of.
And so is that the same then for alcohol or even opioids we hear a lot about these days? Mm-hmm. Is it all the same process?
Yeah, it's a different mechanism, but let me just put it this way. Alcohol may sterilize bacteria, but it's like giving food to the yeast. Alcohol makes the yeast grow exponentially. So if you have a candidiasis problem or yeast overgrowth, just think about throwing nitroglycerin into something. That's what you do when you drink alcohol and you have an overgrowth of yeast. It's, going to make the symptoms much worse. And you're going to have this crash like you wish you never had the crash. It's the same thing with opioids. Not only does your cellular structure become addicted to it, the microbes become addicted to it. So I'm already working with addiction clinics, trying to give them starting protocols to help their bodies shed this addiction, at least with their microbiome or their microbiota. And it's a comprehensive process. It's psychological, it's physiological, it's also dependent on the microbiome. So treating things by symptoms is no longer acceptable in our society. We have to learn how the body operates and how to treat our body holistically in order to allow it to return to good health. And the body is brilliant. It's more than capable of healing itself if you give it the tools.
1,000%. Right. So before we shift into those tools, right, to give the body what it needs to heal, mm-hmm. I just want to ask, because you mentioned autism before, a lot of us know autoimmune is also stemming from the gut. Is it always connected to yeast? How much of it is other, fungal overgrowth or even a dysbiosis of the bacteria that are there?
Yeah. Well, it's a presentation of several hours, so I'm trying to condense
a
very complex answer into a simple answer for the consumption of your listeners. What it is that it's not just one thing. When the yeast is allowed to overgrow and become a mold, it also makes buddies with staph, with E. coli, with other pathogens in the gut, depending where it is. And that they become a support system. And then you become taken advantage of by these microbes instead of establishing that necessary unity with the right microbes in your gut who have your best interest at heart because you're the best environment for them to thrive. And microbes have one objective, and that's to multiply their own kind. So you have to find a way to maintain that optimal balance so that your body is constantly given the tools to repair itself. And by the way, that includes longevity, that includes, mental ability, that includes energy levels. It includes everything that your body does to make you feel better and enjoy your life more.
Could not agree more. So I want to ask you about some of the things that many of us have heard about for restoring our gut bacteria. And then, maybe also think through sort of bigger picture what we need to do. So we'll get to all of that after a quick break for a message from our partner for this episode. So friends, if you are a fan of Salad with a Side of Fries podcast and looking for how you can support us, we've got you covered with awesome merchandise. So our brand new seasonal items are available for you. There's a new tank, or really it's like a muscle tee that says you can't outrun your fork. We also have ones that are hashtag team salad and hashtag team fries. There's sweatshirts, a quarter zip, a cropped hooded sweatshirt. There's an ornament and a candle for stocking stuffers, a wine cooler bag to bring wine with you to your next holiday gathering if you are. A couple new things for the kitchen. So lots of seasonal items and options for you. You still get to show off your podcast love and share if you're team salad or team fries. So head over to our website, asaladwithasideofries.com/merch. Browse the full selection. It's not too late to get your items in time for the holidays too. So snag the official Salad with a Side of Fries mug, perfect for sipping your favorite brew while enjoying the latest episode. Now you can take a piece of the podcast with you wherever you go, and maybe these are your best anchors to remind yourself of your commitment to your health this holiday season and beyond. So simply text the word fries, FRIES, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link right to your phone. Check out all the Salad with a Side of Fries merch. Your purchase supports all the work that we do here, shows your podcast pride, and maybe it sparks a conversation for you to pay it forward and inspire someone else to reclaim control of their health too. So again, text the word fries to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. Okay, Natasha. So living in our world today, I think, and certainly the audience here, everybody very much in wellness conversations, we've heard a lot about gut health. And we've heard a lot about different approaches and things that we, quote unquote, should be having. I'd love to ask you about a few of them because you are just a wealth of knowledge. So you started to talk about kefir before. So let's talk about fermented foods.
Well, there's one simple rule for fermented foods. There are something we called starter cultures. And the reason they're called starter cultures, because they have the right combination of bacteria and might be yeast that will pre-digest that food for you to make it a fermented food, produce lactic acid and other compounds that are beneficial for you, and make it much more easy for you to digest and absorb the nutrients. That's a true fermented food. Unfortunately, the state agriculture departments or whatever the state facility is that's monitoring these foods, as long as they're not contaminated or they're not hurting someone, there's very little vigilance as to what's being put in those food. And people are throwing microorganisms, trying to fool people like they're getting these probiotic organisms in these fermented foods, which is one of the biggest deceptions going on today, unfortunately. So you need to know who's making that fermented food, what is their experience, what is the starter culture, what is the state standard in order for you to accept that fermented food. There's another misnomer what the people want that, please, there's no such thing as a fermented food made from raw milk, because raw milk has its own bacterial noise. Everything that's not cooked has its own bacteria noise. And so it doesn't matter how safe you think that raw milk is, unless it's cooked and then cooled to the right starter temperature culture, it's not going to be cultured. You won't know what's growing in that milk because you have no idea, because you haven't prepared the milk or whatever compound you're wanting to ferment to allow the starter culture bacteria, the ones that you want, to take over and really break down that food for your benefit. So this is one of the biggest problems I face today, is that people don't understand what the criteria is to have a real fermented food, what you should look for, and not be, told a bunch of stories because somebody read a book or read some articles and now they're telling you what you probably shouldn't follow or shouldn't do, but they're telling you to do it anyway because that's what they believe.
Yeah. So thinking of sauerkraut, even as you're saying this, I mean, there's a lot where it's pickled rather than actually fermented to the market.
You can take, it's an old country thing. You can take some salt and sour the kraut and you're going to have the lactic acid bacteria. But if you want to make real sauerkraut, you have to use a lactobacilli, which is a little bit more complicated process. So there's two different processes, what we call the quick culture, where you take the salt breaks down the fiber and allows the acid to form, but there's no really beneficial bacteria. It's just that natural lactic acid that's very healing, and the food becomes pre-digested and all the nutrients that's in the kraut is then easily absorbed by the body.
I'm sort of in the, let's name names. Like, is there a kefir that you really would recommend where you've done some of this research that we would be able to help people?
No, because,
Okay.
and people ask me all the time, and I said, I'd have to look at your starter cultures. I'd have to see your process and make sure that you're following this process all the time, not only when I'm looking. And all I want to tell people that fermented foods are what we call functional foods. They are not the all-known source for probiotic bacteria. There's some probiotic bacteria that survive, but it is not the ideal medium for these bacteria to survive to do you any good. The function of the bacteria in these fermented foods is to break it down into nutrient size where your body can almost absorb everything that's found in that food and not disturb the immune system while all those nutrients are being absorbed. That's really the function of a functional food. And this is what people need to understand. They say, oh, I have my yogurt every day. I said, great. But do you know that, the environment has changed radically since the turn of the 20th century when eating fermented foods was enough? Now it's not nearly enough, and especially since most people are totally ignorant of what to look for in a good fermented food and what they need to be doing on a daily basis. So finally, I had to break down and even though I didn't want to do this, sell a yogurt starter culture and make a video that's on my website so that people can make their own natural yogurt at home following my directions so that they truly get a functional food and they know what's in their yogurt.
Excellent. And so this brings up a question that you and I were actually talking about before we clicked record. So I'll pause on the things that we've heard about for a second. Do you want to speak to the difference between the microbiome and the microbiota?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, there's a big misuse of terminology. People throw around the term microbiome, don't really understand what it is. And the difference between the microbiome and the microbiota is the following. The microbiome means the sum of all the genetic material that the 100 trillion microbes have that line your 27 feet of GI tract. And the number of genes found in that microbiome are 238,000 versus our 22,000 genes. Okay? So they have us outnumbered in the genetic material. And remember, genes do not switch themselves on and off. What switches genes on and off is your perception of reality, the toxins that are either produced by the microbes in your gut or that you ingest through your food, your air, or your water. Those are the only three things that can turn on and off genetic material, whether in the microbiome or in your own genetic setting. It's why I tell people, well, if you have a genetic predisposition to breast cancer, why don't you have it when you're born? You don't. Okay? Something happens along the way. And this is a very important difference. Now, the microbiota is the microbes that line that 27 feet of your GI tract, the 100 trillion, and they're unique in each individual as your fingerprint. So you have to know what you're throwing in there. Just throwing in a bottle with a bunch of names of microbes is like wasting money and time. Because first of all, you have to know what microbes you're ingesting, for what reason. And there's absolutely no reason that anybody should be taking a soil bacteria for any other reason. Nothing. Because first of all, soil bacteria are much more powerful. They can shift into 3 different shapes, and one of them is not so friendly to you. They can also produce toxins to clean up the territory to dominate. And so when you're throwing in a live single-celled brain, like any bacteria or yeast, you have to know what you're throwing into your body. You cannot just take something because somebody told you to take something because it survives shelf life and they want to make it easy to sell their product because they don't have to take care of it by thermally controlled shipping or keeping it cold, but they want to sell you something to make it easy for you to take something to take care of a symptom. That's another thing I want to address. The probiotic supplementation program should never be used to treat symptoms. That's a medical pharma idea that got into the health food industry that should have never been allowed. That when we change our microbiome, we have to change the microbiome along with the microbiota that is in our best interest. Because once you change that whole composition, then the body has the tools to heal itself. The immune system will figure out where it's overreacting. Things will start clicking and going into their natural, normal order to support your best life. Taking probiotics for, let's say, mood or anxiety or to get rid of bloating is the silliest thing I've ever heard of. Because you're dealing with intelligent entities and they are going to do more than what you think you're taking them for. So you have to know who's formulating the product, what's their experience, why are you taking these microorganisms, and should you be taking them on a daily basis? And what I tell people now, listen, I didn't cause the problem. I'm just telling you now the way our society is and the level of environmental toxins, just 200 chemicals in our food alone, let alone our water and our air. We do need to take active steps to maintain an optimal microbiota composition so that our microbiome genetic structure is healthy as well as our own.
Which is the perfect transition back to, some of these things that we've heard. So you mentioned, right, we talked about fermented foods. Then you started to talk about probiotics here. Mm-hmm. What about in the realm of probiotics? There's a lot of people going, oh, I'm taking this gummy probiotic, or I'm taking this one or that one. What do you want people to know with regard to those products?
Okay, well, if you want to be listening to Mary Poppins and say a teaspoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, you're in the wrong arena. Because I always tell people, get serious. You really think the bacteria are going to stand up and say, oh, people like gummies, so I'm going to really perform in this gummy composition because the person taking me wants to make it easy. No, believe me, bacteria do not waste their energy to impress you. You have to entice them to come in a form and shape that makes sense to them in order for them to expend their energy for your good. So I would say cross out gummy bears, not only of probiotics, of anything else. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be tough now. I'm going to tell people, grow up.
Right. I hear you. What about colon cleanses?
Okay, colon cleanses are a double-edged sword. Okay, because when you cleanse your colon, you're taking out all of the microbes on the intestinal wall, and you have no idea what's going to squat there. Okay, so if your body were functioning correctly and you had the right level of bifidobacteria in your large intestine, which the colon is part of the large intestine, you wouldn't need colon cleanses because the whole function of the body is that the large intestine, the colon, is the waste and disposal system. The reason it gets clogged up is because A, foods are not digested properly. B, you don't have the right microbiota structure to help you funnel out the toxins. And C, your transit time is not functional. What is the transit time? It means that by the time you chew your food and swallow it, what is the length of time that it takes to come out at the other end? And it should be no more than 24 hours. You have the Maasai warriors who have an incredible transit time, 8 hours, but we're not there yet. We don't have their lifestyle. We don't eat their food. We're not them. So that's the three things. And if you do need to use a colon cleanse, you have to get on a real, what I call probiotic protocol to make sure you don't leave any voids on that intestinal wall. Because I can tell you one thing, in microbiology, voids are not tolerated and something will take that space. What that something is, I don't know, because each body is unique. Its weaknesses and strengths are unique. So when you're doing that, you better be considering a proper probiotic protocol that actually makes sense.
100%. Okay. Talk to us about juicing, because I remember this was so big for a while. Go for it.
Oh, gosh. I'm sorry, guys. You may hate me after you hear what I have to say. If you're going to a juice bar, you're in big trouble because you're probably drinking more contaminants than nutrients. Why? Because when you break down a vegetable or a fruit, all the airborne microbes come after it because now it's easy pickings. So in the old days when there was ethical companies and they sold you a juicer, they would tell you within 45 minutes, but no longer than an hour, you have to break down that juicer and wash it thoroughly and sterilize it. And as I said, put that juiced amount that you can't drink in a glass bottle and put it in the refrigerator for no more than 24 hours, period. And now you're running into juice bars. Let me just give you a visual. Those machines are not cleaned out for 10, maybe sometimes 11 hours. You can imagine the amount of microbes that has grown in there. Second of all, some of those young people are not taught basic hygiene and don't even wash their hands when they use the toilet. And, people are going in there drinking things for their health. And I've had people call me up and they said that they've been dealing with chronic diarrhea. They thought it was a cleansing process. They're getting breakout in their skin. And I said, doesn't it give you pause to think that maybe you're doing something wrong when you're continually doing the same thing and you're getting these bad results? And so I would say, if you want to juice at home, make sure that you're taking the right vegetable and the right fruit that is compatible with your microbiota composition. Because right now there's bad news coming out about oxalates in spinach. And the problem with our society, we get focused on these little things without looking at the big picture. Okay. I told people, all this business of throwing this stuff in the juice, how do you know your body even needs it or likes it or will even utilize it? So that's where we have to stop the craziness, because if your body's not reacting properly, let's say you go the extra mile and you buy an expensive juicer and now you're going to be, washing your vegetables and washing your fruit with distilled white vinegar or baking soda, making sure the pesticides or the bacteria are off. And by the way, organic fruit and vegetables have more bacteria because they are organic. And that's the one thing that people don't understand. It may be free of pesticides, but it's got a whole lot more of bacteria because pesticides are also potent antibiotics, which most people don't know. So they kill the microbes that's on the vegetable or the fruit. So you need to be washing it. You need to be using it and listen to your body. If it doesn't feel good and you don't feel good after you drink it, don't.
Preach. Amen. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Last one, because I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. The clostridium.
What about the clostridium?
Everybody seems to be looking for clostridium organisms in, supplementation form. And I believe there's a connection to the myelin sheaths, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Clostridium organisms are by and large very deadly and poisonous organisms. And there was a medical news about maybe 4 or 5 months ago that identified an organism by the name of Clostridium perfringens as possibly being responsible for dissolving the myelin sheathing and causing multiple sclerosis. And I agreed with it. I said, I firmly have said and believe what's been said for 2,000 years, that every disease has its origin in the gut. And what modern pharma has not addressed, looking for the cause of things instead of treating symptoms. And there certainly is an abuse of antibiotics. So whenever you have an antibiotic, you need to have a precision probiotic 2 hours after each dose to make sure you don't allow organisms like Clostridium perfringens to have an open field and start making those attachments on the intestinal wall. That will eventually lead to autoimmune disease. So every autoimmune disease has either one or two microorganisms that are causing the problem, which modern pharma and what I call the medical industrial complex has not provided us answers with. And so it's, I believe the body, given the tools, can heal itself. But we have to recognize what the problem is and not treat symptoms, but treat the root cause of the problem.
Agreed. And you mentioned precision probiotics. So I just want to go back to that for a quick second to help people understand what you mean by that or how they would find it. Like, does it require a GI map test or, how do we know?
No, please look, if you're paying for an expensive stool test, forget it, because each one of us has a unique composition of microbes, about 160 to 170 species. And the really expensive stool tests, they cost $1,500 to $1,800. They're only an indicator. Why? Because additional fermentation happens in the large intestine, which mixes that up. And yes, 40% of your dry weight fecal matter is bacteria. So those stool tests look good for people who are infatuated with AI, but they really don't represent what's going on in your upper small intestine, where a lot of the absorption and digestive breakdown happens. Doesn't tell you what's happening in the stomach, doesn't tell you what's happening in the distal part of the small intestine. It doesn't tell you much except what's being expelled at that moment. And then basing some kind of a supplementation program on a completely irrelevant, stool test is, tantamount to insanity.
So how do we get to a precision probiotic or knowing what?
Okay, well, I've spent my life, as I said, 56 years. And I've studied the organisms that have been in the literature for at least 100 years, that are safe to the human being at any level, and that will work to produce or stimulate the other proper bacteria to grow. This is the important thing. And then you have to grow these organisms each so that they are induced to produce those byproducts that we need. They're not going to waste cellular energy to impress us. So what I do with a precision probiotic, I grow them each in the environment that they need to do. I freeze dry them. I put them in a powder or a capsule, and there's protocols. And then, by the way, nobody else in the world is doing what I'm doing. And that's why one of the reasons I want to educate, because more people should be doing this, because the times are very serious. The amount of chronic illness is exploding. So the one flagship we have, it's called the Healthy Trinity. It's the 3 most important bacteria that I have discovered in my decades of research to human health, that's micro-enrobed in an oil and delivered in a 2-piece hard gel capsule, not soft gel, because soft gel process is very dirty and contaminating. And then why is this important? Because virtually 90% or more of any probiotic is killed by stomach acid, because that's the function of stomach acid, to digest proteins. And since bacteria are virtually all protein, it also kills the bacteria, not to allow it to go into the intestinal tract, where it can cause a lot of problems with, the immune system, which is 80% of it is on the GI tract. So you want to have the good bacteria survive the stomach acid, and oil will protect the microbes for over an hour at a pH of 1.8. So that's what you need. Something that somebody sat there and thought, okay, what are the safest, best bacteria? How do I deliver them to the person? How does it survive stomach acid and bile? How does it actually be induced to attach itself to your intestinal wall and do any good? You have to think about all those things. Otherwise, the products don't work.
Agreed. All right. So wrap it up. Anything we missed, or a final thought or something you want to share with everybody?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not a very good salesperson. I've been an educator all my life, but I do go to natren.com, spells natren.com. I still have live people who will help you with customizing a protocol. I give a free low carbohydrate diet that was developed 20 years ago by me and a medical doctor. It's completely free. Whether you buy something or not, I want you to have it. It's very simple. It's worked for millions of people. And that's what's important, not some, hot, flashy stuff that somebody's never tried. And I also give you a free exercise program that you don't have to buy. You don't have to purchase anything. It's free to you if you come to our website. It was developed by a world-renowned physical fitness expert. And I give that to you free because why? I think that, the tripod of health, and that's diet, the proper precision probiotic supplementation, and exercise. And then I'm adding a 4th element, meditation, because your perception of reality is very important. What you believe is what you get. So in order to change this crisis around, we have to have the right approach and not be sold the quick fixes and the things that people want to seduce you into buying because somebody else that looks great is using it. That's not a reason to be using anything. So if you're really serious about changing your health, look into my precision probiotic program, look into the diet that I'm telling you about, and look into the exercise. And see, you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars getting a gym membership or going into, it's very simple. It may not be hot or, sexy that somebody else thinks, but it works because it's worked for 40 years for everybody that's come to our site. And why am I still working? By the way, I'm 76 years old. So if you don't want to end up in a nursing home, if you want to have your mental faculties and you want to be able to use your body, start thinking about it now. Now is the time to think because your body rebuilds itself every year. That's my message to everybody. Let's everybody grow up, get serious about this, and change. The problem that we have in our country that's bankrupting it is this chronic illness issues.
Absolutely. All right, it's time for our rapid fire off-topic questions that I ask every expert who joins us. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week?
Oh, I've had my extra dark chocolate this week. And the best thing I've done for my health is, do my meditation, not skip it because somebody's waiting for me, and just do the deep breathing, looking out at nature and enjoying myself.
Love it. If you weren't the mother of probiotics, what would you do?
I would probably be in a healing art. I would be doing something to help people. I love helping people. It gives me a lot of energy, it gives me a lot of love. It gives me a lot of purpose in life.
Your favorite book on any topic other than your area of expertise, or it could be a fiction book.
That's a hard one because I love so many books. Well, my favorite fiction books is The Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens.
Good one. Classic. If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
That's a hard one too. I think the colon cancer, and that's now so bad and so prevalent even in young people.
If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
To bring joy to people.
Love it. What's your biggest pet peeve?
People who tell me things can't be done.
All right, last one. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
I think the next frontier in wellness is understanding the whole body and throwing out silly concepts and going back to basics and looking at what cultures that live well, are healthy, and are not strapped to medical conditions that take away from the joy of their life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for being here. Tell everybody again how to connect with you, where to learn more.
Right. Go to Natren, Natren.com. There's a chat box. You can talk to somebody. There's a real number you can call. Most of the people have worked with me for 15 to 20 years, and they don't want to leave because they love their job and they love talking to people. So give us a try and see, how it will change your life. Like we've changed, by the way, we have an 80% retention rate. People who come to us stay because they get the results. And that's what I'm hoping for, to entice other manufacturers to make real competitive products.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Just truly appreciate your insights and expertise and your perspective. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, friends. On Friday, your nutrition nugget is all about non-alcoholic beer and wine. So fitting for today's episode where we discuss some addiction elements, I thought, let's take a look at some of the adult beverage alternatives. What's in them? Are they great options for us generally, or is the benefit only that they're zero proof? And then depending on the person, I know that may or may not be a plus. But with the holidays here, all the parties this time of year, and then I realized too, people are going to be talking about dry January. So I figured, let's talk about these non-alcoholic alternatives. We'll get into it all on Friday in this week's Nutrition Nugget. So be sure wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow button, and then your app will alert you when the Nutrition Nugget is live on Friday. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or really all social media. I am at Jen Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Whichever platform works for you, send a message. I want to hear your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. And you can check out our merch at asaladwithasideoffries.com. And friends, if you are not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/saladwithasideoffries. This shows your support for this podcast and this community, but most importantly, it truly supports your health. You'll get this week's recipes for the 3 better for you adult bevies, the winter sangria, the spicy hot cocoa, and sex on a beach. Plus, since it's December, it's time for your quarterly live Q&A. It'll be a one-on-one, just you and me, for 30 minutes. So until next week, remember, your body is brilliant. Consider what could happen if you give it the tools it needs to heal. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.